Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Boring DAO podcast. For today's episode, we have been talking to Jacob Gadikian about anything that's happening in Cosmos right now. So I've been looking at Proposal 69, what it means, and some technical implementations of it. Then we have been looking at the whole Juno drama. What does it mean for developers? What does it mean for investors? And how will Juno move forward from here? How does the future look like? And then we have also been just generally looking at the different options that builders have in Cosmos and how they should be going about building their projects and the decisions they should be making. So very informative, very technical. I learned a ton in this episode, so I absolutely loved it, and I'm sure you will enjoy this episode as much as I did. Now let's head straight into the episode. Let's go. Hello to a new episode of the Boring DAO podcast. Today I'm here again with Rahul, and as a guest we have Jacob here. Now, Jacob, the best is I think you introduce yourself. So let us know who are you, what are you doing, and how did you get to where you are today?
Okay, so who am I? Well, I'm Jacob Gadikian. I'm the founder of this thing called Notional DAO. And what Notional DAO is a multi-chain validator in Cosmos. I'm also a software engineer throughout Cosmos. And how did I get there? Well, I mean, basically have been working in blockchain stuff since about 2014 when I left a teaching job. After, I don't know, it was quite a jarring transition for me. What I mean by that is that I started to invest in cryptocurrency and just had a bunch of realizations concurrently about like, oh my God, this is something very interesting, something that can be very positive, and I'd like to go deeper. Then I failed for about 4 years, almost continuously. Then started a Bitcoin mining company called Drone Energy with some people in Buffalo, New York. That was kind of like, I'd say, the first successful cryptocurrency effort that I was deeply involved in. That business is still operating, although I've exited. And today I'm involved in the operation or maintenance of really quite many blockchains in Cosmos, as is our staff at Notional. So probably like one thing that differentiates us a bit from most validators in the Cosmos network is that we have a staff of about 10 engineers and a number of other support team members. So that's kind of where I am and how I got there.
Awesome.
Cool.
One question I wanted to ask was Cosmos in particular has been growing in market awareness, right? The last 3 months, there's been a lot of hype and a lot of new users coming in, which naturally should attract new developers, right? Given there's many layer ones to pick from in the Cosmos ecosystem, what would you tell a development team to sort of like, if you were to advise them on where to launch? What would be your advice on like which ecosystem and why, or what are the challenges that they should think about before coming over to Cosmos?
Okay, so I would say let's forget a development team for a second. Let's suppose we have the combination business and development team, and we've got a product in our mind, right? So, okay, we got a product team, and what I would say to them is that in Cosmos, we have probably the most choices of any ecosystem in terms of how you want to craft your product. We have Evmos, which allows you to run, Solidity EVM contracts. So, what I'd say to a group of developers is if you have deep Solidity experience, there's probably a ton of opportunity, directly on Evmos. And I've also heard that other chains are, adopting that EVM module. And then maybe if we go up in terms of like supply of developers. So there are a lot comparatively of Solidity engineers. Now, I would still say that's an incredibly, incredibly competitive space. I think that it is genuinely difficult to hire experienced people who know Solidity. Yeah, you can probably easily find somebody who can make you an ERC20, but when you want to program logic or make a very efficient smart contract, that's tough. So that's sort of, I know for a fact there's the most Solidity engineers of anything. And then we have Cosmowasm. And the reason that's number 2, and I'd say that like it's easier than like learning how to build a chain in Cosmos, is that you don't need to worry about consensus. Now, the interesting thing about Cosmowasm is that if you build a product in Cosmowasm, you're also very likely going to be able to use that over Cosmos IBC. Now, Juno's pretty much the only one right now that has full IBC features enabled on its contracts. What this means for you as a developer is that if you launch on Juno, your contract won't have a playmate at this time. What I mean by playmate is if you look at like the test suites for Cosmowasm, you'll see this idea of ping pong. That ping pong test tests the ability of one contract on one chain to communicate with another contract on another chain. And honestly, for my, speaking from my own perspective, that's the key and exciting thing about Cosmowasm. Right now, I think we've only explored the tip of the iceberg. And I think that's also true with Cosmos IBC in general. So, right, then there's the third on-ramp, and I'd say it's the hardest, building your own chain. Okay, so building your own chain in Go is going to give you the most control possible over your product. What I mean by that is that pretty much anything that you add in, anything you can write in Go, you can make a part of your chain's consensus with various limitations, of course, but it's really very, very flexible and allows you to add new features pretty easily. So if you wanted to go that route, I suppose I'd recommend, first of all, if you're a Solidity engineer, check out Evmos. If you can't build what you want to on that, go and have a look at Juno. Despite any challenges with errant whales, I believe that the Juno network has a bright future ahead of itself, and that it's a really great place for you to begin your work on Cosmowasm. Let's say like all the other chains with Cosmowasm deployed right now, to my knowledge, do it in a permissioned manner. Okay, so basically you would upload your contract along with a governance proposal that allows your contract to be executed by the chain. So Juno's probably the ideal playground for that. I go and check that out. And then finally, if you can't make the features that you want to with one of the existing contract solutions, then you would look at making your own chain. To show why it might be worth it to make your own chain, I'll maybe get into the Osmosis code base just a little bit. So Osmosis is probably like the ultimate application specific chain. And it's because there's really been a ton of work done in the direction of actually exploring, okay, so we have our own chain, we control the consensus mechanism. And since we control the consensus mechanism, how can we blend that in with our product? And, you know, the end result of that was superfluid staking, which, you know, I've heard mixed feedback about it from the community. I think that they were potentially expecting like a big difference in yield, but what superfluid staking actually does is it allows Osmo that is in 14-day bonded pools to be used by the consensus mechanism of the chain to secure it. That's something that you can only do if you're writing your own chain. You know, you're not going to be able to write a Solidity contract on Evmos or even on Ethereum that can assist with network security. So with that, probably as the best example I've seen of why you might want to build your own chain, those would be the three pathways. So if you already know Solidity, go and check out Evmos. If you have a feature you want to add, but don't think you need your own chain, definitely check out Cosmowasm. Also, you know, Gnolang is in development. I think it's well worth looking at. But, you know, the development process could take another year. It's a very ambitious language. It could also take another 6 months, you know, or it could take 18 months. What I mean is that because it's quite ambitious, you know, it's a little bit difficult to estimate when it'll be complete and when you'll be able to use it in a production environment, but it's definitely cool as hell. And then finally, if you need to actually build a product with extreme focus, build your own chain. Maybe one other example of this was that the DIG project will be breaking that out into many chains, one per country or jurisdiction. So in the United States, it could be state level chains. And the reason for this is because if you put real estate on a global chain, you'd break the law somewhere, for sure. So we broke it up into many and, you know, no longer really have that concern. So that's another way to use the multi-chain IBC design.
That's excellent.
Cool. When you have been talking about Cosmowasm, you recommended Juno, and I would just like to dig a little bit deeper there. As a developer, would you be worried about what's going on right now? Does it like influence the future of the chain? And what's your general stance with the whale drama? Where do you stand there? What's your opinions on it?
Absolutely. Okay, one, if I were a developer, I would be worried. Not past, okay, past 24 hours from now, probably there will no longer be a need to worry. But right now, yes, okay, because I am a developer and I do use Juno, and it's like a really tough situation. Here's a quick summary of events. Juno's genesis contained an unintentional and massive grant to basically like an unknown actor. Okay. When I say that, you know, we basically, you know, Juno was started from a snapshot, and then I think accounts were capped at 50,000. And what actually ended up happening was that there was this fund-like entity from Japan called CCN that had done the prudent thing. Okay, the prudent thing, if any funds happen to be watching, is definitely to split up, you know, your capital among many wallets. However, in this case, what that created, because basically I would imagine that most very large accounts don't actually do this. You can see that many accounts from the Cosmos Hub did get, you know, cut off by the so-called whale cap, but this was a shall we say decentralized whale. And I've been involved sort of in the debate about what to do about the whales since Juno was a very young blockchain. So Proposition 4, I do not know who made Proposition 4, okay? I chose to bring it to a vote. So I was the depositor on it. Basically, I personally put down 500 Juno on Proposition 4, which I believe basically was a signaling proposal that those funds should be burned. Prop 4 probably lacked a lot of important language, okay? Furthermore, I guess basically what occurred, Takumi the whale and Wolf contract, they spoke to each other, and like there was a touch point. Conspiracy theories abound. I will not indulge them. Actually, I will say that Takumi the whale, I've spoken to him, very polite. Obviously, I'm on the Core 2 team. Wolfie's on the Core 1 team. I think he's a wonderful person. So, do I think that that something horrific happened there? No, I really don't. What ended up happening with Prop 4, what I recall happening, okay, thinking back, Jack said, well, Jacob, it's a fund. And should we be nuking fund wallets? And, what can I say? I kept my vote on 4 as a yes. So I did vote to nuke it, but Jack had a really good point. And then the issue sort of faded into the background for a while, right? And let's say that it was not something that I thought about. And then all of a sudden, 16 occurred. And I guess it was Wolf and Demi, but I'm not sure, that put 16 on the chain. And for the same reason that I supported 4, I also supported 16, which basically, this is about protecting governance probably more than anything. We decided to launch Juno through an airdrop, and definitely we're not aware of the unintended effect of this. Guys, Takumi the whale does truly, there's a large portion of the validator set gets a large portion of their delegations from Takumi the whale. And by the way, I'm not criticizing those validators for a second. Again, I'm no indulgence of conspiracy theories. This is just the reality, right? And does that give Takumi the whale some influence over governance? Yes, I think so. In fact, I think it's very large. So I voted yes on 16 as well. 16 contained language that may well have been inaccurate. When I voted for it, I said, I support the outcome of this proposal. And maybe some of the words were not quite correct. One of them, was gaming the airdrop. I don't know, right? And I'll never know if Takumi distributed his wallets in that fashion to game the airdrop, and frankly, don't really care. The thing that I care about is Juno's security, right? Cosmos chains, they have a certain design. And in order to keep Juno secure, well, I think it's best that, the funds be, I said, 1, distributed, or 2, burned. This is kind of the toughest part about CCN. And since you're asking, if you don't mind, I'll go into a little detail here. So, what's that?
Sure, let's go.
Okay, cool. All right. So, as the Cosmos Hub was launching, CCN was raising funds from many, many people in the form of Bitcoin, and accepting those funds, purchasing atoms, and it created a very heavy presence for themselves on the Cosmos Hub. They also did some like community and meetup type activity in Japan. And honestly, I'm a huge supporter of that, right? I keep hearing very persistently that people who invested in CCNs, whatever it is, their app is a little weird. Like it has pictures of aliens and bonus rounds and, I don't know, right? But it's a weird place and whatever. Thing is, people persistently have come to me and said that they had difficulty withdrawing. So like as this issue became more and more prominent, and obviously, my Twitter account, I was discussing it quite a bit. Users of CCN did contact me, and CCN made legal threats against them as well. I found that really, really distasteful. Fairly sure that what CCN did probably either illegal or gray in the first place. But again, this is cryptocurrency, and I would like to see borderless movement of funds. I would like to see people getting to choose, what they'd like to do with their own capital. To the degree that CCN treats people honestly, and helps people in that way, I'm very cool with it, very supportive of it. But again, persistently heard negative stories. And then maybe to cap off this little segment of our call, about 1 week ago, I did an interview with Don Kryptonium, aka Marcin, or Marcin, aka Don Kryptonium, Takumi the Whale, and a couple of translators who were, sort of assisting Takumi with telling his story. And this was after the passage of 16, and I think before Prop 20 hit the chain. And Takumi was saying, well, I'm afraid that no matter what, the community is going to burn it. What I said to him, look, man, that's not my personal preference. My personal preference is to see the individuals get the Juno. And there's an easy retort to this, right? The easy retort is like, well, what about Binance users? And I'm like, well, life's not fair. We didn't put Binance users in Genesis, right? So, that's that. And yes, people could complain it's not fair, and I'd tell them you're right. But to kind of bring a point home, on that call, I outlined to Takumi, okay, look, you can do the following things, and this will most likely sway the situation from a burn to a distribution. And I outlined those things carefully. I've seen none of it. Instead, he decided to go and, attack Wolf. And again, since the attacks were entirely conspiracy theories, let's say we indulge no conspiracy theories about either side. Whether or not CCN broke the law, let's say that's irrelevant here, okay? Whether or not Wolf, let's say that's irrelevant here. So the thing is, CCN is not even making moves to facilitate the distribution of those tokens. And I know that I gave them a very okay, step 1 is, step 2 is, step 3 is, and then we can send the coins by DAO to the users. I'm not sure there are users because I see no steps being taken toward that. So that's sort of my summary on the Juno situation. And then if you wanted to ask, my opinion, well, I'd still love to see them distributed to the users, but I'm not real sure that I'll ever be able to confirm that the users exist or if they exist. Therefore, most likely burn.
Got it.
And as a developer, would that influence? And as a developer, would that influence your decision of launching on the chain now, or do you think now this burn proposal goes ahead, it's done, and then it's forgotten, and in a year no one talks about it anymore?
Yeah, I think it's likely to end up being that. And look, I can only speak in terms of most likely outcomes until Prop 20 has concluded. And then even then, there's that question of distributor burn. This is going to take another month, probably. But Juno remains the best place to play with CW in an unrestricted fashion. Let me, in fact, talk about a project I absolutely do not endorse and kind of stayed far away from, but am fascinated by, which is that Fortis Economa thing. Okay, it seems to have caught fire, literally. But yeah, the castle burned down, I'd say. Thing is, it was a gamified DEX. It was genuinely creative. I do think it had some very dangerous gambling-like aspects to it. That's why I didn't no. But that's a good example of something you couldn't do, in a governance-gated Cosmowasm environment. But since that one was kind of right, well, imagine the counter case. Imagine that had actually worked, right? That would be, quite different, I think. So, I think a moment ago I was like, well, it doesn't matter to me so much if CCN broke the law. And you know what? Wolf's history. It doesn't matter to me so much. And I guess what I'm saying is, guys, you can verify the state of a contract and see what it does. I'm in favor of the rapid, roughshod, crazy development of new techniques. That also means that you're not going to see me really endorsing any particular contract on Juno, because I know that people can do anything they'd like to. And there's not even a chance that I can review every contract that hits that chain. So, our various teams behind Juno taking a pretty hands-off approach to this. There's that as well.
I wanted to ask, sort of switching gears, but still staying on Juno.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So it's taken on the community-driven area quite well. It's built up a really strong community. My question to you is, what's your perspective on not to use the word centralized, but sort of a key group of influencers, kind of like you have for Ava Labs or Avalanche and Ava Labs, and Secret Labs for Secret Network, where they really help drive business development and adoption. I know that Juno has a community pool that's used for funding new projects. But yeah, what are your thoughts on sort of a few VCs coming in and really endorsing it, kind of like Multicoin for Solana and Alameda too, right? I've seen these players help with adoption. Do you think Juno?
Interesting. Okay.
Or maybe you can negate that altogether.
No, man, it's okay. It's interesting. So in Genesis, you can see basically a rejection of VC and early exchange investment. Okay. But to any VC who's invested in Juno, who's bought the tokens, hell, this is probably the big chance right now. I'd welcome it. Okay. And the reason that I'd welcome it is that, so we have this playground, right? And the real question is, do people begin to build very serious products on the playground? Now, you give an example. I think Juno Swap is a very serious product. But what comes after that, right? What are those next steps? And yeah, I do think that, well, I mean, I don't know the types of activities that these VCs play in those ecosystems, but overall, I mean, I would say yes. I would definitely try and help with the onboarding and adoption part, or like, refer project teams. By the way, if anybody knows people who have ideas they'd like to see built on top of Juno, I would say that as a team member, that's definitely one of our roles, right? Is like to help you to figure out how to execute that stuff.
What are your thoughts on like maybe gathering of a few large VCs or even like family offices to start an ecosystem fund, which may or may not attract developers, and then that sort of spurs additional ideas and building activity. I know Secret Labs tried to do the same thing. We'll see if it pans out, but yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's fascinating, and it's probably the right time. Okay, so I don't know what that looks like in practice, okay, but having an organized network that is able to boost product development will be huge. And further than that, there's also the reality that a Cosmowasm product is actually able to communicate across Cosmos. And I certainly do think that, well, what can I say? I believe that Juno's kind of a bargain right now. And the reason that I think that is just that, like, we're seeing stuff built on Juno that I'm not sure would be possible, for example, on Ethereum. There's a reason for this, by the way. Right now on ETH, the cost to launch a contract, even in transaction fees, is really high. There are also additional like security audit concerns and stuff. But maybe like a silent killer feature of Cosmowasm is this multi-instantiation concept. Basically, like you can have a contract on the chain once and use it infinity times. I suspect this is going to allow stuff to be built on Juno that, well, Juno is all about unintended consequences, right? Like, that's why there is no governance on the upload of contracts. So I would definitely say that bringing in a group of investors to back projects on Juno, it makes a ton of sense. I would personally try and help with that, because, in some of these other chains, it's possible to call them VC chains, because the VC from the very, very beginning at Genesis owned a huge stake, and then maybe they even arranged like preferential vesting rights. This scares the crap out of me. I don't buy in when I see that. However, that's not even possible here. That's probably a selling point to any VC, actually, because that whole scenario has just been eliminated with the distribution of Juno.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really think it just takes even one killer DApp to bring in a high volume of users, like kind of like you had for DeFi Kingdoms and Harmony One, right? So just that one DApp sort of like uplifted the entire chain. So yeah, that's interesting.
No, I definitely agree with that. And like gamified financial stuff that's something I'm looking into at present, actually. Okay, it's a little evil. You want to hear about it? It's
sure.
Gamified liquidations for a DAI-like product. So like basically just presenting the liquidations in a very different manner, right? And essentially making that fun, thereby expanding the range of possible pairs. This is the theory, okay? The theory is that you can then expand the range of possible pairs that actually back it. I think that's a neat one. I don't really know if I'll be like personally pursuing it, but it's definitely like it's a concept that's kind of caught my mind recently.
Got it. And one more question related to Juno is,
Sure.
you have other layer ones coming out like Archway and Saga. And as a non-technical person, I read the white paper, right, and the light papers, and I see the way their architecture is designed. It looks like sort of the next evolution in blockchain in terms of incentivizing all stakeholders, like even developers. You know how Archway sort of rewards developers according to the utility of the dApp that they build, right? And then and Saga has this really flexible modular design where they can host any VM, right? EVM, Cosmowasm, and
Maybe.
so yeah. So where do you see sort of like Juno fitting into the bigger picture as these new changes? So sorry.
Existing.
Okay.
What I mean is that I don't know, you could throw on a layer of financial wizardry on top of Juno and potentially destabilize it. Yeah, you could. And in the case of Saga, I mean, I don't know, that to me that sounds like an 18-month timeline. And they're making a hell of a lot of claims. Maybe okay, pessimistic take. It'll be a cheap Evmos ripoff. All right. Why do I say that? Well, I've certainly listened to their interviews and they're like, well, we'll have EVM first. Oh, well, okay. Now, let's do the optimistic take, right? The optimistic take on it is that they're able to fulfill all their various promises. And what it becomes is a little bit like an alternative to Celestia, maybe. Celestia presents a bunch of very challenging technical concepts, but I've recently started to dig into their papers, and I see analogs between what Archway has been discussing and the papers. And like, I guess, but yeah, the big thing that I would say to you is the difference is existing. The other difference is lack of clear control. So like basically Juno, you know, there is no clear control over Juno. I think that that's a plus. I don't think that that's going to be the case with like an Archway or you know, Saga. In fact, you know, they were kind of describing Saga, like a selling point of Saga as, well, you can have an arbitrary number of transaction fee free applications on Saga. It doesn't add up in my view. I mean, I wish them luck, but that doesn't make a lot of sense, to be honest. You know, the reason we have fees is that block space really is a limited commodity and does have a cost. Otherwise, we're just committing violations of the laws of physics.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. I really appreciate that insight.
Sure.
I'm getting more and more bullish or bullish again on Juno after talking to you. So,
all right, cool. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Like, you know, I don't think Archway adds anything fundamental. If it did, I'd say so. And I don't think the code is around for me to read to be able to evaluate. Whereas, you know, I worked on Juno for almost a year before launch, and the code was always open. That's how I began to work on it. Like, it was an open source project. I thought it was cool. So I started to contribute. And then I wrote most of the Go pieces of Juno, which at launch time were, you know, like a modified Starport template chain with a Mint module that I think Gaines Alex did that. And the Mint module is really cool. Juno is like the module that controls Juno's supply is really this really tight piece of code that lays out a 12-year inflation schedule.
got it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Maybe still standing a bit on Juno, but going at it from a different angle. I would be curious about on-chain governance, because Juno kind of raised some discussions and questions in that sense too, where you had like people like Sunny from Osmosis coming out and say, well, a governance, on-chain governance really shouldn't be able to act as a court as it is right now. Whereas a lot of the proponents of Juno are obviously in favor in saying like, no, this is governance working exactly as it's intended. What do you think? Are there limits to what on-chain governance should be able to do, or as long as a majority agrees, everything is okay?
Well, I think that I have become like a blockchain constitutionalist. Okay, here's one. If we look at the Juno situation, it is incredibly clear. There is no policy, precedent, or a code to stop governance from, nuking a whale or anything, right? And interestingly, I should say, Sunny wrote the governance module. So I suppose, if anybody knows, right, in terms of intent, well, that's Sunny. And I did talk to him about this, and he was like, well, I assumed everybody would take like the Bitcoin stance. And I laughed at that point because actually I'm one of the many Cosmos Bitcoin maxis, right? Like at the end of the day, like what's hard money? Hell yes, it's Bitcoin, right? What is Cosmos for, in my opinion, then? That's for all these applications that are better off as public utilities that you can't really build without a network, and that's why you have the Cosmos design. So here's my thought on all this. First of all, in Juno's case, Juno does not have a constitution. The set of rules there are no rules, right? So if governance says a thing, then it is. On other chains, for example, Osmosis, I've started to take a hand in crafting rules. So just for example, like I have the beginnings of an Osmosis constitution on Osmosis Commonwealth. It's, I think right now, like woefully incomplete, right? But another one was that like I made a gov prop on Osmosis that was really, really controversial, and it violated this social standard that proposals should go to Commonwealth first and then to the chain. And what I did in prop, I think 199, is formalize that. Basically, I created a governance proposal that says now we have a formal requirement that governance proposals be discussed on Commonwealth first. So, boy, that did not answer your question at all. I think chain communities should determine limitations on government that suit them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Do you have any thoughts on the new proposal on the Cosmos Hub? I believe it's proposal 69. They want to include Cosmowasm in the next upgrade.
I think I'm a no. And I'll sort of walk through why. There are good reasons to put Cosmowasm on the hub, but I think I'm a no because when we added governance gated Cosmowasm to Osmosis, the like system resource usage of Osmosis skyrocketed, more than double. And I've always been concerned that Gaia has a bit of a weight problem. She's a fatty. I don't want to take her to the buffet. She'll eat everything. So, I mean, I think I'm a no, but let's say that I'm very aware there are legit reasons for a yes there. But overall, I'd say the better way to do it, but it'll be more time consuming. The better way to do it is to create a shared security Cosmowasm zone adjacent to the hub that can interact with the hub directly. Oh wait, that's Juno. Juno does not even need to accept, the hub's security. I guess basically I have always viewed Juno as kind of a way to shield the hub from Cosmowasm and from arbitrary contract execution. A good example of the consequences of arbitrary contract execution. Remember that time Juno just died? Well, let me tell you, that was a hell of a week. That's what can happen. And does governance gating the contracts reduce the risk of that? Yeah, tremendously, hugely. At the same time, like I guess I just prefer not to see that on the chain that I know for a fact is where all of Cosmos moves funds in and out of centralized exchanges. The rest of them aren't really listed. And I actually think that's good design because we have, the hub sort of as a utility point for that. And everything else can just do the dexes, and they don't have to make the types of compromises that you need to make when listing an early chain on a centralized exchange.
Got it. I think some of the core team is advocating that the reason why they want to enable it is so that they can enable liquid staking, and I think Lido is involved, and they don't want another zone or hub to take over that function. So,
I mean, they're right. There's the thing. They're right. I just hope that it's done without CW in particular. If we wanted to get really technical on it, and hey, why not? You asked me to come on this call and talk nerd stuff. So, all right. Cosmowasm, in a nutshell, here's how it's added to a blockchain. So, Cosmowasm itself uses a wrapper library called Wasmer. It's written in Rust, and it gives you a WebAssembly execution environment. Okay. You compile that. So now you have a little binary. It's not code anymore. It's just a binary. And that binary is the box in which the contracts run. Okay. Now on Juno, basically what we say is, all right, you can have as many boxes as you'd like. And, run anything in our little box. And this is also how, ETH contracts work. It's how Nolang will eventually work. You restrict the execution of the contracts to a certain set of things. And at the end of the day, though, with Cosmowasm, you are taking a Golang blockchain. You're using a feature of Go called CGO to interact with the compiled Rust binary. And then you are finally loading in a contract that was written in Rust typically, compiled to WebAssembly, and running it in that box. Now, I actually think this scales. I think it works well. I'm super enthusiastic about Juno. I'm not super enthusiastic about further fattening Fat Gaia. I hope that all makes sense, because it's a resource hungry way to do things. But our Juno validator is not too much more resource heavy than any of our others. And, I think it'll be totally fine. However, in the case of the hub, I guess I'd rather see it as infrastructure. Now, to the statement that, we want to do liquid staking, we want to see those staking derivatives, I agree. I just really hope they get written in Go as modules, especially for the hub. And then to take it a step further, those Go modules probably should not be deployed on the hub directly. If we want to talk liquid staking for just a second, have a look at Crescent. I made an incorrect claim about how liquid staking is done on Crescent. I thought it was dangerous that I could IBC out BCRE, but CRE itself would get slashed. But nonetheless, I mean, it's really fast. What I mean is it dramatically reduces the economic commitment of stakers. And I wouldn't want to see something like that directly on the hub. And to make it more complicated, I am a supporter of Quicksilver. To make it even more complicated, I don't know if Quicksilver has Wasm dependencies. So like, there's just, it'll be a lot of code reading, talking to different people, and all of that is what's going to determine my exact position on CW on the hub. Oh, final point. I know that there's a lot of ways to improve the performance of Cosmowasm. I know that the Confio team is on it. That could sway my decision as well.
Got it.
Yeah.
I think one thing why the Cosmowasm on the hub would obviously help Atom to accrue more value. So let's get a little bit into the Atom value accrual. Do you think without Cosmowasm, the way it is right now, plus interchain security, will be enough of a value accrual for Atom, or is there more needed?
All right. So check this out. My vibe here is that, let's say Cosmowasm is nil in terms of value accrual. What I mean is, if it ends up being deployed onto the hub, this is probably not the end of the world, okay? But I also don't think that Cosmowasm is going to be the transformative thing that gives us $1,000 atoms or whatever. However, ICS, that's a completely different story. And I actually think that interchain security or shared security or whatever we'd like to call it this week, that's a really big deal. So if we look at the hub's staking setup, you have is billions of dollars available to be slashed. You may now be wondering, Jacob, why the hell is that a good thing? Well, the fact that those funds are actually at stake at risk of being slashed and locked up allows them to be used to secure stuff, because basically that enforces the validator's commitment to the network, right? You can't just step out or you'll literally lose money. So you could build a vast variety of things in shared security zones connected to the hub. Furthermore, it gets weirder and crazier. You most likely, once shared security is in, you can probably mix security. And this will take some time, like 2 years, 3 years. But I would not be shocked to at some point in the future begin to see, chains that are launched and are secured by multiple chains bonded stake. This is also going to it will be easier to, at that point, it's going to be easier to create new chains because you won't need to set up a validator set. That's really pretty hard. I mean, we were able to do it for Dig, and we'll be able to do it for all of Dig's, all these national level chains. But I mean, the reality is I've been working in the blockchain space for 7 years. People to some degree know who I am. Some people know I'm, the evil, crazy asshole. But anyway, the whole point is that, and other people I'd say have the opposite opinion. Anyhow, point is that if we announce a product, most likely we would be able to find validators for it. I don't think that's true for everybody. And I recognize that's a really big hurdle to setting up new chains. So when you think about ICS, consider that right now the largest barrier to creating a new product in Cosmos that has its own consensus is definitely, setting up that validator set and the initial consensus, and that shared security is going to solve that. And by the way, how I said I don't think CW will bring us $1,000 atoms? Well, shared security absolutely could, because it creates a sort of infinity effect. And Rahul, I have an investment specific point for you. In fact, in the case of Juno or the Cosmos Hub, I believe that the community pools, the community funds have not been used effectively to invest to cause the value. Well, actually, Juno is too young for me to say this. Let's focus this commentary completely on the Cosmos Hub, okay? If this hasn't happened a year from now on Juno, then this criticism would be valid. But realistically, Cosmos Hub governance should be actively investing in projects that cause atom value accrual. The first of those should have been the Gravity Bridge, which should have launched on Gaia, but ended up, and then the politics of this are difficult. Okay, I think that that's something that you'd really want to consider if you're thinking about making a pitch to the community, because I think Gravity Bridge, let's say they poorly navigated the politics of their product. But another of these, should have been Evmos. And value did flow to atom holders. But I guess what I would encourage is the kind of polished, complete proposal that really drives home, to atom stakeholders. Okay, we're going to do X. It's going to bring you Y. And then furthermore, might want to look at actually things that drive lasting value to the atom, whether that's a stream of tokens to atom holders over time, something else. I think there's a lot of space for creativity there. Probably the best example right now, I guess, is okay, you had Gravity Bridge, but people were not pleased. You had Evmos. I'd say people are more pleased with that than Gravity Bridge. And then you also have the Cosmos Hub funding CryptoCito's event. I think that's awesome. He tweeted it out, and I was able to say, yes, I'd vote yes in a heartbeat, because that I want to see the Cosmos Hub governance promoting the Cosmos Hub. It just makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we're quite a while into it, but before we close it out, I have one last question that I'm super curious.
Oh, sure.
Because we have been talking about a lot of different things that are happening in the Cosmos ecosystem right now. What is the one thing that gets you the most excited right now? What do you look forward to most in the Cosmos ecosystem?
Oh, it's easy. Okay. So IBC right now, it moves tokens, but IBC is actually a generic data protocol. IBC can actually, be used to make chains talk to each other and react to events on one another. That is the thing I'm most excited about. And, that will take probably another 6 months to turn into products. But at that point, what we have is something that is much more scalable, because right now, there's any one chain has limited capacity, but when you have chains that are reacting to events on other chains, you enter a space of, unbounded possibilities. So that's my one thing.
Awesome. So where can people find you?
Twitter. I am Gadikian on Twitter. And actually the best, that's Gadikian. And our DAO's Twitter is Notional DAO. Twitter DM is really the best way to contact me, in fact.
Awesome. So thank you so much for joining this conversation. It was very interesting, very
anytime.
insightful. Thank you so much.
All righty.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a nice day, guys.
Have a nice day. Thank you so much for tuning in today. It really means a lot to us to have you all tuning into this episode. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to smash up that like button and subscribe to the channel, and head over to Twitter. You can find us at _boring_DAO, and you can find me at CryptoLucasinho. If you have any questions or any suggestions for future episode, I'd love to hear it. Thank you so much for tuning in again, and see you next time. Peace out.